Kind of a controversy with our team, to be honest, with picking who should go. And I know some of the people who weren't chosen are here today, so let's give them all a round of applause. So the three speakers today we have are Anna Brenner, Tucker Reeves, and Emily Belden, and together they bring a diverse mix of interesting topics, from studying man-made monsters to mentoring to why you should be your true authentic self. They're each going to give an 8-minute talk, Pacha style, where the slides automatically advance every 32 seconds. Our first speaker is Anna Brenner. After reading Frankenstein in an eco-criticism college course, Anna chose to study man-made monsters in an environmental and socio-cultural context as a formal English literature major.
Sorry.
It's okay. She received a research grant to study man-made monsters in cinema from 1931 to 1960 at UCLA. Upon graduating, Anna immediately began working as a production assistant on Batman vs. Superman, but soon began using her long working hours to learn web development and front-end development, or web design and front-end development. She moved to Chicago on a whim, took an immersive UX class at General Assembly, and is now working as a junior design consultant at DevMind Software. Please welcome Anna Brenner.
Oh wait, and I have a mic on too. Oh, nice. Okay, hi. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here on this kind of incredibly frigid morning. I'm from LA, so this is like slightly hilarious, right? Especially this weekend, it's supposed to be like negative something like that to me. This is utterly insane, but I guess I'll handle it. So originally, I really wanted to be able to share with you guys something that obviously I'm incredibly passionate about, which is man-made monsters and their creators. But for this purpose, I kind of want to just take a sliver of that and to understand what it means to be a creative and to actually view what our creations could actually do in terms of eventually or even potentially creating a sense of violence. And a really good way to sort of like take a step back and to understand exactly what could be going on is to look at something like pop culture and to see things that we see almost every single day. So I'm sure we've all seen, hopefully, maybe Westworld, Terminator, and Jurassic Park, and it's really interesting to see these narratives kind of really float to the surface in terms of seeing these man-made monsters almost perpetuate a sense of violence and kind of rebel against their creations. So what's like a really interesting way to look at this, right? We have to ask ourselves, like, why do we keep seeing this? Why does this keep cropping up like all the time? So if we take a step back once again and really just sort of take almost an academic viewpoint in terms of using archetypes and theories in particular, this is really helpful in terms of formulating a lens not only to understand exactly what is happening with things in the past and even things like Westworld and Jurassic Park, but to really understand also certain monstrosities that can arise in the future. And a really good archetype, and actually really the archetype for man-made monsters, is Frankenstein's creation. Love him. So I'm sure we all know he is formulated out of man-made tissue and reanimated. And what's really kind of fascinating, actually, is the fact that Victor Frankenstein specifically doesn't give him a name. So he really doesn't give him sort of that grounding nexus from which to really identify in the world, right? So he ends up kind of moving through this void of not really having identity and really just wanting to be loved and have a family, but instead he's denied. So if we kind of look at the world that he's already in terms of like the ecosystem that he's kind of diving himself into, specifically through a theoretician called Timothy Morton. he has, his understanding of an ecosystem is called the mesh. And the way that you can think of the mesh is like, in this riverbank, right, there's a lot of like tiny little things that are happening within here that seem independent, but they really are dependent of each other. And if you kind of keep zooming out, you can see that the riverbank relies on the river, relies on the forest, and it keeps kind of growing and growing into basically the contained system that is the world in a lot of ways. So you kind of have to start to ask yourself, like, okay, what does this mesh actually mean? How can you actually sort of disrupt it? Are there actual disruptions? Because you can never actually remove something out of an ecosystem. Well, CreativeMornings has this concept called the strange stranger, which would be sort of Frankenstein's creation in and of itself, right? He's strangely familiar in that he's still human, but not quite. And you really have to sort of ask, like, what is scary about this? Why specifically is this something that's scary? Why do we fear him to the point of putting him in a corner, like literally and figuratively, to the point where he sort of erupts out of himself and creates a sense of violence to Frankenstein's family and basically that whole universe? If you end up sort of looking at him, in particularly with the idea called the uncanny valley. So he would be kind of right at that axis, right at the top. And this kind of demonstrates the idea that as an entity moves closer to looking human, they are a little eerie, they become a little bit more scary. And it's kind of that sense, right, where we've all seen those robotics where like, it's a person, but is it like, no, like, icky, right? Like there's something really kind of scary about it the more it looks human, but then there's like that really interesting drop off. So we really want to focus kind of on like that axis, like right at the top. That's really like really the cornerstone of really where man-made monsters are. So when we move on from archetypes and theories, we can really ask ourselves, what can we learn from those things, specifically as creatives in particular? And I think that this is really important in terms of being able to move forward with our designs. In terms of, in a lot of ways, we have a really beautiful burden to create. But what happens if our creations end up going awry, right? In a lot of ways, kind of deep down inside, we can fear that in some way or another. But in terms of really understanding that, we have to ask ourselves first, what is the actual condition of fear and what is the condition of understanding our monsters? So, you know, originally with stuff like this, you can say like, oh, don't play God, you know, don't listen to your hubris, whatnot, and then the obvious happens. You'll get squashed or eaten and digested, and that's obviously, it's terrifying, right, obviously, but we're the ones who actually create these monsters, right? Like, we're the ones who created this sort of visualization, and if we take the word monster and break it down to its root, which is the word moner, it means to warn, but what is it warning us about exactly? Well, it seems like it's something that's more internal than external. Even though that these monsters seem like they're away from us, it's actually more of a conversation within. There's a theoretician who says that monsters are looking into a mirror darkly, and you can see sort of your demons kind of coming out. And I mean, it's terrifying, right? No one wants to be able to see that, but I think that as creatives, we actually are really in a unique position to be able to handle this. And if we actually start to be able to look in our mirrors originally, because not only are we creatives, but we're also creators. And it's sort of the understanding that we are the ones who actually put pen to paper. We're the ones who actually create really beautiful things. They call us movers and shakers for a reason, but in this sense, we also have a moral obligation as well as an ethical obligation to not only understand what we are creating and how we are creating it and whether we can make those good decisions, but also to really immerse ourselves and to understand if these things do go awry, how can we really understand them and connect with them? And I think that the big aspect of that is when we do put pen to paper and when we do actually create something, we are inevitably putting in ourselves, in our creations, right? There's always like little pieces of us that are in our designs, or, you know, I'm sure there's some developers in here. I'm sure a piece of you is in that too. And if we view that instead as extensions of ourselves and even explosive extensions, and we can never really hate it, right? Because in a lot of ways we end up really hating ourselves. And we can't do that without ending up, in a lot of ways, destroying ourselves. So if we look at this in particular, we can see, well, now you can't, but he's really like, it's about his environment, right? The Hulk can't control the way that he feels. And if we, like, again, step back to the idea of the mesh and really look at this sort of contained environment, you can see that you can never really remove something out of it without creating a rip in that social fabric. And if you do that, that's where you put those creations in that corner, and they sort of erupt out of themselves and can turn to violence instead. And it's that, really the idea that the mesh is contained and you can never really remove yourself from it in any sense, or remove something else. So, sounds a little hippy-dippy, but you know, if we're going to be moving in the direction of fear and hate and putting things in those corners in order to erupt, it seems like you have to move in the opposite direction, right? You have to actually approach these things with love and kindness, and that's really the only way to actually be able to immerse yourself and understand it. Because as humans, especially as creatives, we can never really grow without truly being able to have a loving relationship with ourselves to begin with. So why can't we love our creations? However, the kind of like the interesting thing about this, as I said before, is that these are really scary entities, right? Like they can squash and eat and like potentially destroy us. So obviously, it's not an easy task. But I truly believe that as creatives in particular, like we're already more than halfway there, right? We're already incredibly empathetic people. We're already these sort of like beautiful, honestly, like beings of light. Again, I know, LA hippie, like just in my blood. But we're already like more than halfway there. We could totally do this. And even if we're on the precipice of AI and all sorts of things that could be scary, I think we got this. Thank you. Oh, questions. I'm sorry. I forgot. Somebody got a question. I know. So it's like, it's kind of an interesting thing to digest in a lot of ways.
So we use this concept in your consulting. Like how does that translate into like your work?
Yeah. Well, I think in particular as a design consultant specifically with DevMind, we really, or at least like from what I've learned in that sense, is we really have like certain people who we want to work with, right? In sense of like actually creating a certain type of change. Like we just finished a really fascinating project with a nonprofit in Detroit, and in a lot of ways it's about being able to, again, having that moral obligation to make decisions that are good and bad, and to think about the bigger picture, and to kind of like zoom out a little bit and to say, what is the moral obligation of the things that we are creating? Like we're actually creating something for the state of Michigan. We're building something that could benefit a lot of people. And I think that just having this sense of like approaching our designs with like just 100% full just love and understanding and even kindness to things that we create, and actually view them as kind of these growing, almost like, again, human things. I think is a really interesting perspective on it. Like at least at DevMind, we print everything out. We're like very like hands-on and for all of our designs. So it's about really kind of immersing ourselves and trying to not necessarily personify our designs, but to almost make them as human as possible to create like interesting interactions.
She's allowed one more question. If anyone has something.
Make it a good one.
I was just wondering about your perspective, because you made reference several times to LA hippie. So I was wondering if you feel like that, coming from that region of the country and living here and working here, how does that inform your work? And would that inform your work differently than another designer? And also specifically your view of monsters? I don't know, maybe there's something West Coast specific about it.
Sure. I think, to be honest, I've had an incredibly lucky sort of mix of different experiences in that sense. Like I've said before, that there's certain things about LA that are like really cool. You can go anywhere and get like juice and like kelp noodles, which is all about like, nourishing your body and like that whole thing. There's a lot of yoga and like soul cycle and stuff. But to be honest, I've lived there not my whole life, obviously, I'm here. But there's something about the people in the sense that when people in LA commute a lot in their own cars, they don't like rub shoulders with people. So there's not really a sense of like kindness, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily personify LA as being the kindest city. But here in Chicago and in the Midwest, like everyone is so nice. Like, oh my God. Like, you guys are so friendly, and it's like, it makes me so happy that I feel more friendly and I feel more, but it's like that different interaction in terms of being able to actually sort of like have two different sides of the story in terms of really kind of treating your mind and your body in a certain way, which I think LA is like really good at. Like Chicago is a little bit more like meat and cheese and beer, which is incredible, right? But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I need to like go and do a juice cleanse, like so it's like, I truly think that there's a different sort of mix of being able to treat your mind and your body in a certain way, but also there's something really important to be said about your connections with people. And not to say that LA connections are disingenuous, but there's something sort of kind of a little bit like harsh about it, I would say. So I really believe that the mix that I've had in terms of being able to like treat myself well, in terms of like, again, body and mind, but also being able to really form really beautiful connections. Like the people who I've met in Chicago, I've never made those connections before with other people. And it's incredible. And I wouldn't take back my experience in Chicago for love. Even though I am still an LA hippie, deep down. Yeah.
All right, it's prize time. We have another game. I don't know if this is really a game, but it's a prize. So we had the raffle going back there that asked the question, are you wanting to make a change in your life?
That was
and part of why we do
fascinating.
these
That was
events is to
excellent.
inspire and motivate change for the good.
Neither.
So we're simply just going to be picking a name and giving them a prize with no strings attached this time. This is what we're giving away. It's a leap kit by past speaker Victor Saad, who founded the Experience Institute. This kit is perfect if you're at a crossroads and you want to learn something new or just take a different direction. It's meant to lead you to greater clarity around your skill set and your passions to help you figure out and take action on what you hope to change in your work or your life. It's been proven to be a really great asset. So, someone very lucky is in the beginning of this thing. Kyle, if you want to come over with the box.
It does look neat.
Josh Falcom.
Hey!
Hey, Josh. Okay, so I just have to ask you a question. What do you do?
I am a filmmaker,
Oh, nice.
and I actually just moved to LA back in town for the holidays. But I was living here for a long time. So.
I have a PDF of like all my favorite places if you want it. It's well designed and everything.
Okay.
Is there something particular that you want to change?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. I'd like to get more focused in the work that I'm doing. Right now, I'm doing general videography, and I think I want to figure out one topic to address. So.
Awesome. Well, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker has a great name, Chaka Reeves. She is a digital storyteller. Ajay, you love that. She's a digital storyteller, educator, and creator of High Water, which is an email magazine and podcast dedicated to the stories of artists and creatives. She's also the coordinator and lead instructor for the Art, Tech, and Media Experience, which is a project that teaches alternative school students the basics of video production, photography, graphic design, and web development. Please welcome Chaka Reeves.
Thank you.
And we're just hitting next that was started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Let's see. I'm really, really excited to have the privilege to talk with you about something that's really important to me. And I don't think this is new when it comes to creatives. A lot of the work we do is because we were mentored and because we have someone that, or people, several people that took us under their wing. But I want to talk with you a little bit about being a mentor, particularly to 16 to 24-year-olds and to what I like to call marginalized or trauma coping youth in Chicago. So I also wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got to this place in my journey. I didn't move back to Chicago thinking that I would become a full-time educator. I really thought I was just going to focus on my work. I do want to be clear though, I'm not advocating that any of you go out on some dangerous mind stuff, some freedom rider, stand and deliver stuff, and take your privilege and your unconventional methods and work with these rough and tumble youth. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that you should consider having a mentee in these impressionable years, but I'm also going to be very honest with you about some of the challenges of mentoring. So I met Brother Mike in 2013 at a digital media mentor training I attended at Columbia. And I initially took the job thinking this will help me make a little bread while I get my portfolio up and it's flexible, but he was so excited about working with young people. He always talked about his babies and the projects he was working on them with at U Media, including a student of his named Chance who was recording his first mixtape in the library. So on December 3rd, about a little over 2 years ago this month, Brother Mike passed, and at the time, the digital learning community was really grappling with what we would do to fill someone that took up such space and who mentored so many kids. At his memorial, somebody said that sometimes God takes people who are doing more than their share. And at his memorial, I realized I wasn't doing enough. So I started really committing myself to mentoring young people in digital arts and introducing them to visual arts. And it's also a lot of really great benefits. Number one, you get to create the marketplace. We all love the work that we do, but we're all maybe not always sure there's an audience for it, but there's no better way to do that than helping to get the taste level up of the next generation. If you really work with the next generation and introduce them to art and introduce them to design, then you make sure that you always have a career. So another important part of mentoring is creating your industry. This is one of my students, Winsette. She learned Adobe Premiere this summer, and she really likes editing, which is amazing to me because I don't like editing at all, and I get paid to do it. But she's 17. As soon as she's done with school, I'm snatching her up. But this is also a really great part of making sure that the lessons that we've learned and the work that we do gets imparted on the future generation. So we make sure that we want to continue to keep doing this work. You can't really talk about Chicago, unfortunately, without talking about our violence problem, our gun violence problem. And I think that as much as creatives know that our career depends on our network, this idea of network also applies to what a lot of our young people face in the city. So we hear these crime statistics. I think there was a statistic that Chicago had 4,000 shootings this year already. But a very interesting study by a Yale sociologist said that of the 70% of nonviolent or non-fatal, shootings in Chicago happened about in 6% of the total population. So if you think about how important networking is to what we want to do as creatives, who's in your network is really a question of life or death for a lot of the young people in this city. So what would it mean if a creative person was added to a network like this? I wanted to show this design. Right now my kids are working on making their own album covers, and my student Kenneth made this. And he said he wanted to capture what was good about the city and also what was bad about the city. So on one side of the flag you have the buildings downtown, and on the other side you have the Chirac unfortunate moniker that the city has earned. He told me that he knows that there's good parts of the city. He doesn't see them very often, but he knows that they're there. It also helps you keep things simple. We can get a little heady and jargony in our work and, a little bit high post, but if you have to explain to a 14-year-old how to work with editing software or the elements of visual grammar and those kind of concepts, it makes sure that you're always sharp. It makes sure that you're not really taking your craft for granted if you put yourself in a position where you always have to explain it. This is me at Home and Square, working with a group of middle schoolers in a cultural event class. I think it also keeps me pretty young. I'm not going to tell you my age, but I routinely get pulled over by security at the schools where I work because I don't have my badge on. But I think that working with young people has kept me young in a lot of ways because they keep me abreast of their culture and they really teach me as much as I'm teaching them. It also gives you a foothold into the future and trends. For example, if I was trying to think about how people listen to music right now and will listen to music, I would think about the fact that none of my kids use streaming services. They all listen to music on YouTube, all of them. So that also makes you think about what kind of innovations can come from that kind of knowledge. It also helps me be relationship focused. I made the mistake of coming into my first educational situation thinking I'm an adult and you're going to listen to me because I'm an adult. That doesn't fly with the young people I work with. It's I have to really demonstrate to them that I care about them as a person. They're not going to give me any kind of respect or attention just because I'm sitting in front of the classroom. And that's something that we should remember as professionals as well. So these are just examples of some of the awesome creatives who have worked with the kids I work with. This is Eric Williams, on the left, owner of the Silver Room. At the top is Mike Reed. He is the founder of the Pitchfork Festival. He talked to our kids in Holman Square. And at the bottom is Jennifer Williams, who is the director of Chicago Cultural Center. So these are some of the examples of creatives who've taken a little bit of their time to make the city a bit larger for our kids. On the right, my right, we also have my filmmaker friends, Aaron Coates and Raphael Nash, who talked to some of my filmmaking students over the summer. And on the left, my left, we have Zakiya Najiba, who's an incredible photographer for Black Girl and Owner and other brands. And she talked to my students about Black lives and visual storytelling through photo. So these are just some of the examples of the awesome creatives I work with that are already doing this work. If you are interested in touching the lives of a young person, this is my information. And I really, really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much, Creative Mornings. Thank you so much. So I have time for 2 questions. Yes, with the cool glasses.
So obviously there's not a cut and dry or tried and true way of engaging your privilege in community contexts where you have a lot of privilege. But can you give maybe 1 or 2 examples where you've seen someone successfully engage their privilege in an underprivileged, empathetic quotes, community context?
I'm very fortunate. That's an excellent question. She had a question about, is there a way you can't erase your privilege, and you really shouldn't try to, but are there examples of ways I've seen people successfully incorporate their privilege? Trying to remember. So there was a teaching artist symposium that one of the creative organizations in Chicago had. I'm drawing a blank and I don't want to say the name wrong. But it was just a really great opportunity earlier this year to talk to people who are doing all kinds of work in the city. There was one artist who is a photographer that actually used photography to create a timeline of the number of shooting deaths. And she created a visual mural, and every time somebody passed, there was a photo of them, and they were taken and they were kind of laid out in kind of a data way. So that was a really awesome example of combining design and kind of visual arts with the statistics, adding kind of humanity to the statistics. So I think that we don't need to erase our privilege. I think that it just helps to realize that we are helping people tell their stories, and just kind of leading with that as a priority. When I talk with my kids just about all the things that they've been through, I realize that you've been given a story. And if I'm thinking about my privilege can help you get that story heard. So it's not something I need to pretend or leave at the door. So, another question? Yes.
For all of us that are reporters, what stories aren't being told that need to be told in Chicago, especially given all that's being talked about with violence?
Excellent question, and I'm really glad you asked that because it'll give me an opportunity to touch on something I wasn't able to fit in one of my slides. I was really, and I'm continuing to be disheartened about this whole 76 ratio. It sticks out in my head. One particular semester, I took a group of my kids to the U Media Center at the Chicago Public Library, and I love to take kids to that space, number one, because it's a cool space and I can't go unless I have a kid with me. Like, they have all these cameras and they have 3D printers and graphing tables and a recording studio, and it's just comic books. It's lit. It's amazing. But I have to have kids if I want to go. So I like to bring kids with me, and we just spend a day hanging out there. But I like to bring them, and I tell them, this space, as long as you're in high school, is completely open to you. So I check in with my students and I say, so have you been back to the library? Yeah. And you're like, well, you know, I'll go again if you take me. And, you know, my kids are 17, 18 years old. And I'm like, well, you can hop on the red line at 95th, get off at Harrison. Like, what's the problem? And they say, I can't get on public transportation. I don't know who I'm going to see. I don't know if there's going to be a problem. I don't know if I'm safe. So I think that we think of Chicago being a city of over 2 million people, but for the young people that live in these neighborhoods, it's about 6% of that. If you ask them what Chicago is, they know about the skyscrapers, they maybe get downtown every now and then, but the city in their experience is extremely small. And it's made small in part because they're trying to survive. So that's something I really wish it was another part of the conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was excellent. Awesome. And now we're following that up with prize time.
There you go.
Okay. So this next game is we're actually going to be surprising 3 people with these 2017 desk calendars that are made by past speaker Matthew Hoffman. Each day has a phrase on it that will motivate, inspire, or simply make you smile. The 3 people that we're surprising these with have attended the most number of Creative Mornings events. And we really just want to say, hey, thanks for coming. So topping the chart at number 1 with 24 events attended, right, is Mark Lozano. I hope that fixed it. Okay. Is Mark here? Oh, there you are. Thank you so much for coming. He is also known as Eddie Mumbles and does awesome hand lettering. Okay, tied with Mark for the number 1 spot with 24 events attended is Jancy Liu. And shortly just behind them with 23 events attended is John Lombardo. You know what? I had a feeling this would happen, so I have the next person in line. So too bad for John. Coming in at 22 events attended is Rebecca Furlick. Is she here? Yeah.
Thank you, that's awesome.
All right. That's all the games we have. But you have scones coming, so. Okay. Our third and final speaker today is Emily Belden. She is a 2-book author for powerhouse publisher Harlequin. Her debut novel, Burned, will come out in 2017, and in 2018, Husband Material will be released. Born and raised in Chicago, Emily tiled her bedroom floor in over 60,000 pennies, all heads up for good luck. Local media ran the story, which was eventually picked up by the Today Show, the Chicago Sun-Times, and more. She's repped by famed literary agency Brown & Miller, as well as 44 Blue Productions out of Burbank, who is adapting her memoir into a comedic series. Please welcome Emily Belden.
Thank you. Can you be able to hold all this?
Yes, okay. I'm like a hoarder.
Here, you can use this too.
Okay.
And then all you have to do is hit.
I only have that one slide. Oh, what do I hit?
Oh.
I'm not very techy.
Here, I'll do it for you. Let me know when you're ready.
Go for it.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is going to be a little wild compared to the first 2, so I apologize in advance, but not really. So, hi, I'm Emily Belden. Some of you may know me as the author of this rated R best-selling memoir, 86th. And if we went to high school together, then you'll know me as the girl who waxed her own eyebrows on the night of the newspaper holiday staff party. And actually, that is why we're here today, because today I'm going to tell you the story of the time that I waxed my own eyebrows at the newspaper staff holiday party. So, you see, when I was a senior in high school, I looked at that as my very last chance to be popular at my very large public school in the suburbs, go Dukes. So I volunteered to host our newspaper staff's holiday party at my parents' house in the burbs. So while cookies were baking in the oven and taco dip was cooling in the fridge, I decided last minute that I would wax my own eyebrows for the very first time. So not long later, my best friend, who is still my best friend today, came over to help put the finishing touches on the party. And as soon as I opened the door, she kind of squinted and asked if I had done something to my face. So, like panic, sheer panic. But I held it together and I nonchalantly replied, nope. And then I took her tray of ginger snaps and brought them to the kitchen. So the fact that I did not own what the hell I did to my eyebrows still haunts me till this day. Because what I didn't realize then was that ripping off hair on my face with a kit I bought at the Jewel Osco for $4 would be the first of many mistakes that I would make. And what I also didn't realize then was that talking about my mistakes very openly would become the best and most successful decision that I had ever made. So let me back up for a second, come with me. 86 started off as a Dear Diary on steroids to help me get over a breakup with the guy that I thought I was going to marry. Hindsight, LOL. Anyways, from my dilapidated Lincoln Park walk-up, I started writing about just how fucked up it feels to be newly single in this city. Because Chicago is a place that makes you want it all at the point where you have absolutely no clue how to get anything. So Chicago is cruel like that, but we forgive because, well, Portillo's and summer. So every day I'd write a little more and more. From a bad day at work to a bad date, I would put it all down in this little Word doc that I was working on. And eventually I hit this critical mass where I found myself saying, my God, this could be a book, over and over. And so I made it one. Now, this book is a memoir, which means that I made the conscious decision to be open and transparent about my life, my mistakes, and my lessons learned. And when Forbes magazine wrote an article about the way I went about pitching it to publishers, it was game over. The floodgates opened, and I was agented and repped and published within a year. So, now that sounds cool and all, but I had to get over the fact that my preschool teacher, who has read the book, now knows my view on handjobs. But it hit me that if just one person reads this book and says, holy shit, this is my life, then it's worth it. If one person feels less alone and more empowered after their heart was ripped open, then it was worth it. If one person laughs at the time I accidentally wound up on a group date at Morton's the Steakhouse with a sugar daddy who offered to pay me 10 grand to play golf with him the next morning, then it's worth it. Currently, 86 is in episodic development with a major studio in LA, and I signed a 2-book deal with one of the world's largest publishers, Harlequin, earlier this year. So yeah, it's been worth it. Being transparent, though, with my life was a big risk, and I still feel the effects of going public with my private moments all the time. You know, I'm sure it was painful for my mother to know how crippling my dependency on alcohol was in the 20s, and I don't think my dad liked it when his spin teacher asked if the part about the lap dance was true. And not to mention, I don't think that having a manual to my most memorable moments with men helps in the relationship department either. So I get it, it's a lot to handle. But what was the alternative? I leave parts out? I be vague about my experiences? Or worse, I just lie and make stuff up? I mean, I think our president-elect has all of that covered. So here's the thing. Embarrassing as it is, hurtful as it is to some, TMI as it is to some, it's still me. And just like you, I've got one job, and that's to be me. So let me tell you what I figured out here. I learned that every time you show up as yourself and speak your truth, you give other people permission to do that exact same thing. So imagine what that feels like when it's just one other person. That incredible friendship that can bloom, or the relationship that you can happen upon, there's loyalty there, and there's deepness. There's longevity, and that's all from an authentic, real, mutual relationship. Now expand that out to a room full of people like we are here today, or within your office when you go back to work, or within your family at your holiday dinner. How powerful is that? When everyone involved has permission to be your absolute self. So do your part and take every chance that you have to be authentic. Whatever it is, own it, hold nothing back, confess your eyebrow sins. You know, it's funny because I think about that day still, and I think about it with regret, because we could have laughed about it. We could have bonded about it. Hell, we could have fixed it. Probably not, actually. But I missed out on that experience because I chose inauthenticity. And why? Like, I have no good reason. I really don't. Embarrassment, maybe? Oh, fuck embarrassment. Because we're all going to get to that age when we don't care what people think about what we do anymore. So why don't we just hurry it up and get there? So they say sex sells, and sure, there's a little of that in 86, but selling is only one part of what I do. There's telling too. And I am committed to making every word that comes out of my mouth and winds up on a page, it's going to be the most authentic it can be, and unapologetically so. It has never failed me. It has never steered me wrong, not in business and not in my personal life, maybe a little in my personal life. So last month I spoke in San Diego. And moments before I went on, I asked the host, is it okay if I swear in my speech? And he said, of course. You're here to be you. And that's when the fucking fireworks went off. Because you're here to be you. It's the most simple thing, but I take that with me everywhere I go, and I hope that you do the same. So, sorry this was quick, but I think I have time for a couple of questions. If it's a publishing question or a specific project question, come find me after. I'll stick around. If you want to grab a copy of 86, stick around. If you want to start being super authentic and you want to confess something really wild right now, just lean over to the person to your right and whisper it in your ear and see what happens. But that's all I have for you today, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'd love to take them. Questions? Hat. So I wrote 86 in real time. So 86 came out in 2014. So I wrote that in real time, like as things were happening. And then the other two books that I have coming out are novels. They're fiction. So they're just products of my imagination because I live in a fantasy world. Yes?
Both the positive and the negative, what kind of experiences have you had out of this?
Positive experiences is I get to do stuff like this, which I really love because I'm a big believer in showing up and being yourself and seeing what happens. So this I really like because I love to see what happens after this and all the people that I'll meet and connect with. Negative, I would say, is just that the book is complete tell-all. Now, it's not it is a shit show, but it's not just a shit show to be a shit show. There's a point to it. So every chapter, there's a lesson that you're going to take away, and then at the end of the book, you'll be crying and texting someone and being like, oh my God, you need to read this. So I think that the negative is that there's a connotation that it's just debauchery, and it's not. That there's depth and there's meat in it. Anyone else? Is that it?
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right, well, that's all the speakers we have for you, but there is one more announcement that I want to make before you head out. And is that 2016 has been really great for us. We've had 22 incredible people take the stage this year over the last 12 months. We had our largest event ever with 400 seats, and we broke a record with having over 600 people trying to attend a single event, which was Jenna Blazevich's. And just like George Costanza, I'm leaving things on a high note. Today, after 4 years of planning these events, today is my 48th event. It's my last one, and you all get to share that with me. And I'm leaving. So it's just time, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like a presidential term, like 4 years, I'm good, you know. I'm kind of ready to see the next chapter and take some time laying in a hammock and like, I don't know, just see what comes my way, what blows my way. But I would never leave you guys hanging. I have chosen a great replacement who is going to be starting in January at the events. This person cares about inspiring, building, and protecting this community just as much as I do. And this person is a designer, a letterer, and a knitter. And they actually blow all of you out of the water with having the most attended events ever. This person has attended 44 events out of the 48 that I have planned. So, winning the ultimate prize of being our new organizer and host, please welcome Jen Marquez.
I feel so completely honored and thrilled that Kim would pass the reins to me. And before I say anything more about myself, can we just like give a standing O to Kim and to Kyle and the rest of the team for making this Creative Mornings has been a place for us to, you know, come and congregate and to get together and, you know, meet each other and to find ways that we can connect and to be inspired. And there are so many chapters around the world, and I don't know, this feels like home for a lot of people, and I think it's been such a wonderful thing, and it wouldn't at all exist the way that it is with all of us here without you guys doing what you do. So thank you for everything that you've turned us into so that I can, you know, keep moving it forward. Just to give you a little bit of information about me, I'm like Kim said, she covered a lot of it. I'm a designer, hand letterer, a knitter, sometimes candle maker, but that's like definitely down here on priorities. I am a senior designer at Razorfish. Technically, it's City at Razorfish now. I'm also in the merchandise mart, which was really nice because it's still in the same building right here. But anyway, I've been going to these events for so long, and like I said, it's been like home, and I love coming to these events. I love connecting with all of you. I love this sense of community that we have here, and I'm so excited to keep that going and for you guys to see all that we've got planned for 2017. So I hope you're along for the ride. And I'd like to introduce who our January speaker is going to be, and it's going to be, I don't know if there's not a...
Yeah, just hit the...
Susan Messing. If y'all haven't heard of her, she's a top improviser in Chicago. She's an alum of IO, she's worked with Second City, and she's a co-founder of the Annoyance Theater. She's got a running show Thursday nights. She's hilarious, she's awesome, go check her out. And yeah, she's going to be our January speaker, so come check it out. See you guys, thank you.
Enjoy the time off. Eat as much as you can.